had a haircut since. Today on the final lecture, we're going to talk about lobbying for just a minute. We talked about it a bit last week. And then we're going to do a brief final review. It won't be a full final review because you have pre-recorded videos of every single lecture that you can watch at your leisure. And since the exam is literally open book, open note, open everything, you could actually just watch the lectures while taking the exam. Lobbying is a system by which interest groups get their voices heard in government. So the way it works in practice is you're an interest group, you go to Washington, D.C. or wherever you want to lobby, and you just hire a lobbyist. And you say, look, I have this really important cause, I want to save the whales, and I want you to go schedule meetings with lawmakers and talk to them about how important this bill that you're writing about saving the whales is.
Let's say you're an average citizen concerned about the climate. You could yell at a senator.
We are now fighting for existence.
Or make your kids do it.
Can I go in and share this letter in front of Feinstein?
But Billy Delancey says he has a better way for the little guy to be heard. Lobbying.
Lobbyists for Good is a crowdfunding platform that lets everyday people raise money to hire lobbyists in order to get their voice heard and make actual change on Capitol Hill. Well, we'll do our standard meeting, make sure that we're brief, make sure that we're on point.
Laura Reese is one of those everyday people. She's a vegan climate activist who wants to shrink the livestock industry. She found Billy's organization on Reddit.
Hi. I sent him a pitch for lobbying against animal agriculture subsidies and trying to flip the incentives toward plant-based proteins.
Laura's proposal raised $5,000 on the Lobbyist for Good platform, which buys her a part-time lobbyist for 1 month.
Do you find people aligned with these kind of what you might call do-gooder causes? Are they naturally more resistant to lobbying because of the connotations of it?
Oftentimes people like Billy and Laura, when they get into these issues, they never consider talking to or working with a lobbyist. They often go in and have talked to members by themselves. They never get real strategy because they're convinced that lobbying is inherently a bad thing.
I want to show that this farmer is getting help, but this farmer's not.
Yeah.
A lot of people see lobbying as a way for wealthy interests to buy favors from elected officials. But if you want to get something done in D.C., good or bad, a lobbyist is how you do it.
After you.
Laura's original pitch was to end all federal subsidies for animal agriculture. A lot of those subsidies end up in the farm bill that Congress takes up every 5 years. The latest was $867 billion and passed in December. On advice from her new lobbyist, Ron, she instead developed a small pilot program that would offer grants to help livestock farmers switch to growing plants.
Sometimes people want to go and the first thing they decide to do is lobby to revamp the entire farm bill. It's not plausible. And so what we realize is that we have to take politics and reduce it down to what's meaningful.
Yes, lobbyists really do write legislation. Ron wrote the actual language for the pilot program that the group is now shopping on the Hill. And yes, laws really do get started this way.
Hi, Congressman.
But first they need somebody in Congress to sponsor their legislation.
Laura here is an everyday person who used our platform.
I've been working with a dairy farmer in Wisconsin. His name's Dan, and he really wants to switch to growing tree nuts on his land. But he can't because he doesn't have any help.
And so this pilot program would set up the ability to provide research and opportunities for the best management practices to help other farmers transition. Now in the process, just looking for those members that we can get on board.
This would have been something that would have been part of a farm bill.
That just passed.
We are actually starting conversations now about how do we prepare for the next farm bill.
Blumenauer has some ideas of his own for how Laura could promote her pilot program.
What are you doing with celebrity chefs?
But Billy still saw the meeting as a win.
If you get stuck talking to a member of Congress, make the best of it. But people like Kevin, I mean, the certified smart people who really run the place, right?
The staffers play such an important role in the legislative process that having him agree to the theory of the pilot program in front of his staffer then gives him the green light to go ahead and do the legislation that is required to actually get this written into law.
I think we're happy to kind of keep in touch with you all. I think we will be supportive of this program.
He talked about the farm bill, which, I mean, that's 5 years off, and I understand getting in early, But to me, finding an avenue for legislation for this pilot program, the urgency of global warming, that didn't feel very good to me.
This was one meeting of many. The $5,000 she raised got Laura 35 meetings with Congress and staff. And if she raises another $5,000, she gets another month of work from Ron's firm.
Why does it not work to say, just go find Nancy Pelosi and scream at her and say, environmental apocalypse is coming, do something?
It just doesn't work that way. Human nature says that I'm gonna be more willing to help you out if I view you as a friend and if I view you as a partner. And for somebody to come in and tell somebody, A, what to do, and to say it's my way or the highway, it gets such a negative reaction from members of Congress.
The dairy industry, beef industry, they have tons of money, lots of lobbyists. Are you naive in thinking you can take them on with one lobbyist?
There are a lot of people who are cynical about the organization. There have been some pretty stupid crowdfunding campaigns that have raised a lot of money. I think Cards Against Humanity raised $100,000 to dig a hole in the middle of nowhere. The resources are there. I mean, if we all pitch in, we can raise enough money where we are able to hire lobbyists to counter the corporate influence.
Is lobbying good or bad? Should lobbying be a part of a functional democracy? Two basic arguments here. The people who generally say that lobbying is on balance good say that the point of a democracy is for people to get their voices heard. In a modern governmental system, in a modern democracy, you need a high level of expertise and a high level of access to lawmakers in order to get your opinions heard. And so lobbyists facilitate that function. Lobbyists are actually very good at representing special interests, and without lobbyists, we would not have the voices of special interests, who of course are made up of the people. Government would be substantially more insulated from people's actual opinions than it is. The argument against lobbying, or at least lobbying in its present form, makes a couple points. One, it says that the fundamental principle of democracy is one person, one vote, not $1, one vote. Because lobbying is hugely expensive, you can influence the government roughly in proportion to the amount of money you have available to spend. So, point one, it violates the principle of one person, one vote. Point two, in practical terms, the amount of money spent by public interest lobbying groups, like Greenpeace or something, is dwarfed many times over by the amount of money spent by private interest groups, like oil companies lobbying for a tax break, or chemical companies lobbying for looser environmental regulations. And so in practical terms, lobbying does not have a purifying or a people-centric influence on the government. It has the opposite influence. It has a corrupting influence. When where narrow interests, narrow private interests, influence the government out of all proportion to how much power they actually should have and how much support they have in the populace. So those are kind of the two arguments for and against lobbying. Just email it back to me over email with a Word doc attached to an email. Don't send back a PDF or a Pages file or share it to me through some third-party or proprietary service where I need to log in to access the file. Just attach it to an email. If for some reason you don't have access to a computer or the type of thing you can type up your answers on, you can handwrite them on paper and then take high-quality photographs using your phone or some other camera, and then email those photographs to me. Just as long as I can read the writing, we're good. The exam is a take-home exam, and it's therefore open book, open note. So you can cite whatever you want to cite, you can refer to whatever you want to refer to. The only stipulation is that you properly cite it, and if you're quoting something, you got to put it in quotation marks. Materials available for you to study in advance of the exam include all of the pre-recorded lectures that we have for the second half of the course, which are in a playlist that you can access at any time, and they're infinitely replayable in whatever speed you so choose. All of the readings that we've done so far, which are all linked in the syllabus, and all of the questions that you guys have graciously sent in over the second half of the course, which I have emailed out, and it will be in your Lehman email if you check that. That's it for today. Pretty simple. Ordinarily, the last day is kind of this nice, easy day where we all hang out, but we can't. I just have to thank you all for sticking with me through what is certainly the weirdest semester in recorded history. Go ahead and get credit for everything this semester and then move on to next semester. That's what I would do. But thank you for sticking with me. I'm sure I will see all of you in the future. Bye.